Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Compelling Conversations podcast. Today I'm joined by Ben. Ben, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What I wanted to begin with was just being curious about you. What got you into being the person that you are? You seem to be very out there politically, if I'm using that term correctly.
Well, I really wanted to get involved in the political scene, at least with how polarizing the landscape was in America today. I actually didn't initially envision myself in SGA, and didn't know exactly everything about SGA before actually running for the position of president. But I had been involved in like little kind of grassroots political organizing, mostly voter registration and education efforts, specifically for Beto O'Rourke. I don't really care too much for him as a figure too much anymore, as that was a little over a year ago. But from there, I just kind of gained the basic skills on managing a team. So I was like the co-president of the chapter on campus at the time. Um, but from there, I kind of learned about SGA here and there. I had heard some good things, but honestly, mostly bad things. And then I just kind of at least heard about at least some drama or things that were going on, and some people started egging me on to run, and at least believed in me that I can make it into a better place in which cohesive work is getting done. And so I decided to do it. It was pretty difficult, but now I'm here about uh, 11 months or 11 months since I basically started thinking about SGA to now. It's December, so still pretty far through my term, but still working as much as I can. So that's at least how I got involved on the most local scene of politics right on campus. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with where it's taken me so far.
Do you recall a particular moment where you realized, wow, this is something that I'm really drawn to?
Um,
It doesn't even have to be just SGA related, but you're talking about the grassroots and whatnot. Was there a moment like this is where I envision my life going?
it was about early to mid-April of 2022. That's where I at least kind of, so I was initially majoring in architecture at the time, before switching over to
Damn.
political science.
Now that you say that, I could see you as an architect. Oh
Mhm.
my God.
It's funny.
Wow.
But yeah, I kind of liked, for one, I was already really into politics. I kind of wanted to at least I come from like a family where like my dad's like Lebanese and an engineer, and migrated here due to war-torn Lebanon at the time in the 80s, going under a civil war. So his whole view of a college degree and going to college and return on investment was like STEM or nothing. Like, do you want to be a Starbucks barista with your liberal arts degree? So initially, I like architecture a lot, so I said, okay, I'll start with architecture and just do politics on the side. But architecture is a really intensive degree, and it's very fascinating, interesting, and I enjoyed all my time there, and have made many friends that I still have in there from today. Um, but I ultimately decided that it wasn't the path for me, and after at least I convincing my dad, like, hey, I'd like to switch poli sci. I was like, okay, I can't control your fate. He kind of did it with the intention that, oh, most likely I'll then become a lawyer or something. I wasn't initially really passionate about that at the time, but actually now I'm extremely passionate about becoming a lawyer after getting my degree and moving on to law school. It kind of just went up from there. I just kind of wanted to at least get the experience and start off connections for now in local political organizing, and getting a feel for how the political scene works, and how it functions. And in many ways, I kind of learned the good and the bad pretty fast. But it was definitely a net benefit for me, and has helped me mature a lot in trying to focus my attention on what really matters, and what are some of the few goals and initiatives I really want to focus a lot of my life into. So that's how I got started, at least with a little convention that happened in April that I attended. I'd already been on the fence about staying with my degree, but so kind of went to it, and I kind of realized I really want to be a part of this. So that's what made me switch.
One of the things I'm thinking about is how much of politics is a person's innate personality versus something that's placed onto them. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it really depends on the person. I would say it's definitely a good mix of both. At least in my case, I would say it's a bit more of my personality, but it wasn't necessarily pressure placed onto myself, but pressure I was seeing placed onto others. I mean, I saw lots of laws being overturned or precedents being overturned by the Supreme Court. Um, the first usual like soft transition of power from one president to another being challenged. There's been a lot that's happened in the last really 8 years in American politics that has
Yeah.
fundamentally transformed this country, unfortunately for the worst, over the last 8 years into a manifestation that wasn't really much imaginable 10 years ago.
Yeah,
So
you're so right about that. You know, what's wild is yesterday at this party at my aunt's house, I met this cop. You know, he's one of my uncle's friend. He just came over. So me and him were talking for a good minute, and he was from New York, and he was telling me, he goes, you know, for him, the golden age in New York was 2008 to 15. He's like, after that, in the era of Trump, it became like a culture war. You know, everybody just takes to the streets. Everybody just protests. It's like order has just been thrown out the window, you know? And I thought about that and I was like, yeah, that's so true. Because I remember when, you know, the presidency changed, it did feel like a culture war. I mean, I could really feel that, a culture war, something different, something that I wasn't used to growing up with.
yeah, it just feels there's like two phases of like our childhoods, like basically pre 2016 and then pre 2020, with COVID just making things even crazier and a lot worse and really silent into echo chambers on artificial um, groups on social media. So now it's a lot to process, or at least try to like. I guess I got to really sit down sometimes to remember what life was like before COVID, and at least how people interacted with one another, and how it was
Yeah.
naturally innate that all interactions were just done in person. Like it was just precedent. You never thought of virtual, even though it was kind of a thing coming up. This kind of
Yeah.
this kind of really solid it on everyone. So it's a lot different now, in some way, in a few ways for better and accessibility, but others, I don't know. I try not to get into the boat of let's go back to another time, but at least I would hope over the next 5 years, which we're starting to see recover a lot from social isolationism, that communities will start to be rebuilt in person again and start to get better. So it's a lot better than it was 2 years ago, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
I remember that social media before the pandemic, it was a thing. It very much existed. People did use it. But when we all went into the cave of the pandemic, it intensified. And then when we all came out of that cave, it was life now. Like social media and the virtual world, digital stuff, it's just so intertwined with life, you know. Even like schooling or work, it just feels like it's a lot more technological now than it used to be.
Yeah,
It's
I would say
interesting.
I would say it's a lot more addictive now. It's not, in my opinion, it's, I mean, a lot of people, at least when social media was first being invented and marketed towards Americans in the world in the early 2000s, very late 1990s, people saw it as, quote, a way to get more connected and build more community. But the problem that people are realizing now is that when you put a different lens on community or social interaction, or say you're just interacting digitally rather than physically, you're not expanding the opportunity, or rather um, the quality and quantity of interactions. All you're doing it, well, I guess you're technically expanding the quantity, but the quality is significantly diminished. What you're doing is humans still live only the same amount of time. You're only filtering out how much time is physically and how much time is digitally. And although you can get lots of opportunities through digital, it becomes more distorted the further you go. And now we're kind of coming to a reckoning where it's like over the last really even 30, 40 years in America, community social life has been very diminished. And as a result, we've started to become more polarized and at each other's necks. So now it's at least me, I'm trying to move into as much in-person social interaction as I can, or at least that's how I've always tried to be. I really even kind of didn't really have a liking for social media even before like its prime age. Other people were using it more. I didn't have like a bunch of followers. I didn't care to have a bunch of followers or even post regularly. But now it's just encompassing and everywhere, and even is part of the mechanism to climb up the social ladder in some cases, which can be scary, but at least something I try to navigate to the minimum effort of what I have to put in order to get the max out, so I don't become siphoned onto it. So all I can say is I hope society, or rather the mass public, because the companies are going to do what they can to make their money, start to throw off um, the algorithms and try to build communities in person and away from the screens.
You have got quite the vocabulary. I'm impressed. And your voice, like I was as you were speaking, I was noticing, wow, this voice like is different. Where do you get your voice from? I mean, obviously all of us our voices are shaped from different people that we're inspired by or exposed to, but I'm curious about you. Where's this voice coming from?
I don't know. I never really tried to model my voice after anyone. I mean, my voice got pretty, I guess, deeper, or people said my voice is getting deeper around like sophomore year of high school, junior year. Just kind of formed like this. I don't know. I people ask me, I don't really got anything. I don't got an answer. So
Interesting. Yeah. That going back to this thing about social media. I met a guy one time and he said to me, uh, how he didn't like social media because he felt like the way it was when you meet people and then you like add each other. He's like, it's like a placebo effect in a way or something where now that you've added each other, you're friends. Like it's done. That whole experience is done. We're friends now. I don't ever need to talk to you again. I don't ever need to see you again. And when he said that to me, I laughed because it was true. Like it can feel like that sometimes. It can feel less than platonic, and it's interesting. But going back to some things we're talking about with politics, I was talking to one of my aunts one time about different prospects in life, and she was explaining something to me. And when she explained it, what I realized was everyone on earth is a business person. You have to be. You have to be a businessman or businesswoman. Do you feel like everyone on earth is also a politician for themselves?
yeah, I you could say in a way it's just a lot of people are very poor politicians, and a lot of people, or a very few people, are good politicians.
How do you
And then,
become a good politician? What do you think?
well, there's two definitions of that. There's what corrupt politicians define as a good politician, and there's what the few ones that are a bit uncorrupt uh, on the earth define as a good politician. Although I wouldn't break it down to that binary view either. It's can be lots of shades of gray. Um, as even some of the most martyred figures or people that we elevate to these beyond life positions usually have some skeletons in the closet too, as does everyone. But um, I would say a good politician is someone who just puts actions behind their words. That's if you have that, you're ahead of about 75 or 90% of the rest. If your actions match your words, a lot of people will build up tremendous respect for you. If you never have your actions matching your words, um, regardless of how charismatic or persuasive you are of individuals or groups of people, you can go far, but there's always just a limiting factor. But if you have action behind it, you are well ahead and only going to keep moving forward as long as you continue to do that. No doubts about it. Um, but also, a good politician is someone who, despite whether there's obstacles in the road or um, lack of built up social or um, technological or whatever type of infrastructure in place in order to make things happen, is one who inspires others to see what action and social mobility they can bring about in others around them. So a lot of people can be empowered to do many great things. They just have to see that in themselves. And I would say a good politician is one who uplifts those that can't uplift themselves, but also is able to elevate those who didn't necessarily see that switch themselves before to act on their own fruition and take their own dreams into their own hands. So that's what I would define as a good politician, or at least a good social leader. But there's a lot that really goes into it. So it's very broad, but that's my bit on it.
There's a lot to unpack there. I like especially how you said that thing about actions and words, you know? Um, it reminded me of that sentiment. I don't know if I'm quoting it correctly, but it's something like 20 years of love can fall apart in 20 seconds of anger or something like that. Or even if you have like a squeaky clean reputation, you do one thing that, shakes that foundation, it ruins everything. And it's interesting to look at that. And I'm curious if you think there's ever redemption in the world of politics. Do you think redemption is ever a thing?
There's definitely redemption. Like I said it earlier, again, there's always subjectivity of definitions on who you ask. You're going to get a million different answers on what a word or what something means. But
Of course, yeah.
historically wise, you could say um, Richard Nixon had redemption when he won the presidency 8 years later, but then messed it all up 5 years later.
Damn.
So, I
Oh
mean,
my goodness.
people get redemption. It's just what they do with it afterwards to keep it sustained and keep it real. When Martin Luther King wasn't a politician, but a big social figure, I mean, he had probably his lowest time in Albany, was it Alabama, I think, with the nonviolent movement kind of being stopped there and not being successful. But then about a year or two later, had lots of successful strides and getting towards where they were trying to go. So you always get ups and downs with life. There's also some things that people commit that others will say, oh, they've been redeemed after death or something. It was well documented that MLK, despite being a fantastic leader, unfortunately, there's lots of things people usually find out about individuals, titans after death. MLK was cheating on Coretta Scott King a lot during their marriage, but I'd imagine being a civil rights leader, you're going to have many, many people throwing yourselves at you across the entire United States. Doesn't justify it, but that's just like something to kind of point out with even exalted figures, or same with JFK, or even figures that people may not agree with as being really what do you call it, redeemable, or people who should be exalted. It's honestly, it's give or take. Everyone has their 15 seconds of fame, like Andy Warhol says, but sometimes people find a way to get it back. So it's just
And
fun.
I love how you mentioned that Andy Warhol thing. It's a good point, dude. You know, your last name is Rizk. In Arabic, that has one meaning, and then in English, that has one meaning. You you were leading the chants for Palestine at school, and that was a risk, but you took it on. What
Yeah,
gave you the courage to do something like that?
it actually happened pretty spontaneously. I came to the protest to support anyways, because of what's going on. And I kind of looked around, and everyone there, including the main organizers, I loved everyone there and respected and knew a lot of people there, but a lot of them did not want to have their face put on a article or something somewhere in which they'll have in which, their job prospects or their position with, because there's some international students there, so lots of international students especially don't like to be involved in any capacity with stuff that could get them in trouble in their homeland, with political affiliations or whatnot that are documented. So no one wanted any of that, whether people were from and born in the United States or from somewhere else, or just are trying to keep their professional career together. But apparently it's like, I mean, apparently it's as bad as, I mean, I would say it's as bad as the civil rights movement, that if you're caught supporting integration, I mean, you could lose your job or something. And it seems like that now, that if you're caught supporting freedom from apartheid or genocide, that you're just a filthy anti-Semite. And I said, screw all that. I mean, people were kind of all there. No one was saying anything. I said, where's the organizers? Found the organizers. And I realized no one else got a chance. So I said, screw it, I'll do it. I mean, I already had been planning to put out a statement on our social media page and on my personal page about the conflict. I already have voiced, I already had a new paper article on Cougar Outs where I voiced support for it at a Senate meeting for Palestine. But I don't really care. Like, well, there's a funny quote in a movie of one of my favorite movies called Casino, in which there's basically this guy. He's basically the brute who always keeps others in line, but he's very stupid and doesn't care what happens to him. Like in the movie, he says, "I don't give a damn what happens to me. I'm stupid." He's like threatening some guy or something, and then even though the guy might go to the FBI, just really threatening him and scaring him, and it's like, I don't care if people don't want to hire me. I don't care if I end up on the Canary mission. I don't care if someone wants to take my life over this. But if there has to be, I'm not going to be silent when there's genocide. And also, I hate the term "be on the right side of history," because that takes away from the reasons why people should act on righteousness or what's right and wrong
It's
and just.
hilarious you say that. 'Cause I love that statement. Be on the right side of history. But explain this. I'm curious.
Well, because people like to overuse that term where it's like, oh, when I'm dead, I want to be remembered that I did the right thing. I don't care about being remembered by others for doing the right thing. I just care about doing the right thing. And I would say I mostly care about that because I will go insane if reality is not matching my actions or my words. It's like, okay, and that's kind of the same reason why I ran for SGA. It's like, because I have kind of a moral compass where it's like, if I see something going wrong or I see bad things happening and it's within my power or within my will, or I believe it's within my will to stop it, and I don't, I'm just not gonna be able to live with myself. And if there's genocide going on and there are people saying, no, genocide's not going on, the Israeli government is defending themselves. All they have to do is just bomb the shit out of Gaza and kill all these children in order to do it. Like, no, that's slaughter. That's genocide. That's ethnic cleansing. That's apartheid. And I can talk about moral compasses and where my allies and beliefs lie, but at the end of the day, if what is happening is unjust and wrong, it needs to be called out, and people need to accept reality. And so I started chanting. The dean of students, he's a great guy, Dr. Dean Young. I love him. But when he saw me down there, I smiled at him like, "Yep, about to happen." But I mean, it's just I don't care. If someone feels the need to kill me for calling out what's wrong, then kill me. I'm not going to die. I'm very, very stubborn about this, but I cannot under any circumstances ever be threatened into not saying the truth. Like if something's happening, like, I'm sorry, I guess I'm gonna be the first one to die then, because I can't keep my mouth shut. If you're going to try to silence people or threaten people with their jobs or livelihoods, I just don't care. I really do not care. And you could say, like, I referred to the Casino quote earlier because it's that where he says, "Because I am stupid, I don't care what happens to me." That's the thing too. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care. Maybe I'll be shot one day for it. I don't know. I just don't care. If you point a gun at me and tell me to put an apple in my face and tell me to tell you that it's an orange, I'm probably gonna die because I'm not going to. I'm just too stubborn for that. It's like, no, you need to grow up. You need to recognize what's going on. And I think if a lot more people are fine with sacrificing livelihoods or pissing off people who are stubborn and can't accept reality, this conflict will be resolved a lot quicker. So that's my thoughts on it.
Wow. Wow. That was really something, man. That was really something. how do we care? How do we care about these things? It's something I genuinely think about because it requires a lot of selflessness, at least from the way that I see it. All this talk is making me think of Imran Khan. I don't know if you're familiar with him, the former leader of Pakistan. But the man very much had that vision, that perspective. Like, I, I, I'm doing this for my people. I'm doing this for the truth. You know, he had all sorts of death threats at him. At like everywhere he could look, there were just traitors. Traitors behind him, enemies in front of him, and they locked him up. It's been a minute. They've had him locked up, but I've always admired that courage. That ability to just say I don't care because I have to just stand up for the truth. I have to be this revolutionary in a way. And he sacrificed like family life. He sacrificed social life. He used to be like a really, really famous cricketer in Pakistan. He's like a big celebrity, and he sacrificed that whole life of comfort just for the sake of his people, for the sake of truth. It's really admirable. But yeah, like going back to the initial question, how do we care? How do we get back? How do we get onto that level of just caring?
Well, I would say being able to quote care at that level means having to um, break off the perceptions of what others want or feel that you need to be around you. I mean, um,
What do you mean by that?
or at least with my specific case, my dad, my dad, for very intelligent reasons, due to what happened in Lebanon, for the most part, thinks nearly all politicians are thieves, and that no matter what system, just stay out of politics. Build your generational wealth, keep to your family, and rise up through that manner. And um, all these causes people fight for is just a waste of time. And that people should learn to grow up and live with one another in that sense, kind of live the American dream. And it's not a bad ideal to have, because my dad's definitely very tolerant of many people with many different views and is always fine with having conversations about things. But overall, his dichotomy, his compass is don't get involved yourself because it's a detraction from what you should mainly be doing. And at least I had to make a big jump. I was saying, like, Dad, like I'm not going to get a degree in STEM. I don't want to. I want to take a risk and take a degree in a liberal arts, and then do my best to get accepted to law school, and then move from there. And I mean, that honestly, looking back, was not that hard to do. But going from there, at least running for SGA presidency, was an extreme risk. It was a big mental toll on my family. My dad actually eventually congratulated me for it, and because he kind of got more invested in the race, it got more intense. I don't know how much you read into the elections last year, but it was extremely controversial. There was a bunch of stuff that happened. The results got thrown out on a very controversial Supreme Court ruling, and they had another election, and it was just terrible for everyone. No one enjoyed it. Everyone was happy when the election was over. And I hope this upcoming election isn't like that. But overall, I had to kind of shift past what I thought was reality or the path to get towards things, and kind of have to absorb and learn what my restrictions are and what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do, and try to get everyone on the same path as much as possible, or at least the people around me I was trying to, or running with me to get there. I say a lot to say is that there's lots of what do you call it? What people usually define as the restrictions or goals that are hanging them or holding them back is usually their perceptions of how they perceive it. The quote, anything's possible. And in many ways that's true. It's just there's certain mindsets that people get into that once you break or once you reach a goal, you realize that wasn't that difficult. And it's all about your approach to things. So whether that's family or whether what other people want for you and your fear of trying to break out of what other people want or feel is right for you, whether it's in your family or around you or your environment, what you truly feel you need to do is a lot of time you have to identify what's the part holding you back and it that can take that can take a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of will, a lot of soul searching. I know I did a lot of journaling for a little while, for about 2 years before figuring out that this was the right path for me, or no, about a year and a half.
You
Uh,
know,
yeah.
what you were saying right now about how you accomplished something and then you realize, oh well, that wasn't all that difficult. At this current moment right now, in reality, what do you think is the biggest mountain you've climbed?
Um, Biggest mountain I've climbed.
Kilimanjaro? No, I'm
I
kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
yeah, I would say. I mean, initially 6 months ago, I would have said winning the SGA election, but now I would say sustaining and building SGA into an organization that people want to be a part of, and that's actually getting things done. I think there's still a lot to go, and SGA was at a much more functionable and efficient capacity 5 years ago before COVID hit, and I want to get it back and further and even better than that. SGA helped in many ways even get the stadium built. Like that's a major feat. That's something a company accomplishes. And that's because a lot of people were very invested and had been the organization for years and understood how the bureaucracy of the university works. And really, my big mountain that I've climbed is at least get SGA to a foundational level, or a level on which it's operating, that can advocate effectively for students. Because the last 2 to 3 years of SGA has been a very dormant and infighting and dramatic and irrehensible state that a lot of people didn't want to get involved with. And I think that there's still a lot that I had to work on with that, my admin, many mistakes I made along with accomplishments, but I would say it's at least one of the best states it's been in the last 4 years, but there's a lot more that has to come. In order for it can't stay at the place it's at, and I don't intend to keep it where it's at. So uh, my uh, my mountain right now is trying to make sure that the next admin is even a lot better than mine and keep things going. So that's where I'm at the moment, while of course balancing school and moving on eventually to get my law degree. So that's my mountain I have to climb right now.
Going back to that police officer, that captain that I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, he one thing that he said to me was, you know, man, when I walked into this house, into this party, and we sat down, we were eating, it was just a conversation between you and me. You didn't know I was a police captain, but now you know. And then, the conversation, it continued and it evolved and it was cool. But what he was saying about that was when people put on a uniform, like say like a police officer's uniform, they get perceived in a particular way. And he's like, but they don't realize when I take that off, I'm just a person like you. Do you feel like that's how it is with yourself? I mean, of course, there's a lot more to go, but whatever you've done so far, do you think people perceive you in a particular way?
Um, Definitely a lot of people say, "Hey, Mr. President," or things like that, or at least definitely have a very high liking to me. There are some others that don't. I don't really try to be liked by anyone, or just try to do what I can.
That's
Um,
life, eh?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it raised minimum wage to $10. We held the End the Stigma event as a big campus tradition that hasn't been done in 4 years. We have basically phased out all plastic bags, as well as kind of reduced plastic straws on campus through our food vendors. Um, I'm actually putting this into a university bill now, but I just negotiated with the auxiliary services to open an all halal restaurant on campus. So uh,
Damn. What is this restaurant gonna be?
I don't know the concept yet, but it's just basically getting started. But basically, they're going to replace one of the lower tier Chartwell's restaurants, most likely Asado, in the student center, with an all halal restaurant, since Asado's been operating a low rate.
That
And
is wild.
at least in terms of volunteer efforts and community involvement, SGA basically hadn't held their town halls in like 4 years. So now, as many centers have been holding town halls. Um, we've had extensive volunteering efforts. We've Let's see, what else have we done? I mean, basically, we're planning a bunch of events right now for the spring, like International Our Language Day, Recycle Mania efforts.
I hate to pause you here, but we're running low on time. We've got a couple minutes. I always ask, I guess, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say we didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind that you wanted to discuss?
Um, Mostly, I just hope that people start to believe in themselves more and start to take the steps to do what's necessary to become their best and fullest selves, which usually requires throwing off a lot of mindsets they've had in the past, but being willing to have tough conversations with loved ones around them and be even willing to let friendships go in order for better paths to be made in life. The only way you're gonna be, what do you call it, be your best self is not to look for happiness everywhere, but to look for the necessary steps or problems that you're going to need to solve both for yourself and others in order to get to where you want to go. And I would say it's better to look for fulfillment more than happiness, which means having to challenge yourself every day. So that's kind of my closing remarks, or at least parts I wish we could have talked about more. But yeah, I always like talking about anything. So I'm happy to have been on the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to have had you, Ben. I thought this was a great conversation. I certainly learned a lot. There's certainly a lot to think about. And for whoever listens, I hope it benefits them however it needs to and inspires them. So appreciate your attendance. I
Thanks for
suppose
having me
until
on.
next time, man.
Yes, sir. Of course.